This video is only part of an unpaid, unbiased, in-depth review from an average rider's perspective, so check out the rest in the link below at thegoodride.com. If you want real advice, fill out the Me Harmony profile in the link below so I can help you properly. And if this video helps, please consider donating or buying through our links. Thanks for watching. Welcome to The Good Ride. I'm James Beastie, and this is the Burton Genesis Reflex. Next to it is the Genesis Step-On, and I tested it with the Photon Step-On and Burton Kendos. And then next to it is the Burton Cartel X EST. I would have loved to have had a Genesis EST because it has changed this year, but it's so hard to get anything with all these supply issues that I was lucky to have this as well to throw it into the mix. I tested this with the Burton Deep Thinker and the Burton Territory Manager. I also used all these bindings in a sampler to see how they all sit on the spectrum, and I love doing that with extended demos. I've gotten these in a wide variety of conditions, mainly good groomers, but some powder too, and some messy groomers. And in the past, with a different high back, but the same base plate, ankle straps, and toe straps, I got these in every condition imaginable because I've owned them in the past, and I've owned the Genesis X before that was discontinued. And to give you a short summary, there's a new high back this year, and it has a different flex, but the rest of the binding is the same, but I like that improved, softer, more mellow, more twisty flex versus the old Genesis. I think it just even further reduces calf bite, which was almost non-existent, but it also adds a little more symmetry to the binding in terms of response, heel-toe. That being said, compared to the Step-On Genesis, the response is almost perfectly symmetrical, where this still feels asymmetrical. Same with the Cartel X and any Reflex or EST binding in comparison. But it's not just about symmetrical response, and despite its limited adjustability in some areas and no stance width adjustability outside of the channel system, these bindings just have this nice smooth response. They have this excellent butterability underfoot. So let's talk weight. These are 1.8 pounds per binding with the discs and screws in. If you compare that to the Genesis Step-On, 1.8 pounds as well. If you compare that to the Cartel X EST, that's 2 pounds. When it comes to the high back and the Highback Flex, you can see it's changed a good bit from past year's model. It still has this little layer in the middle. I think it's called a hammock strap. And what you can see here is the flex of the high back is a little softer than the old Genesis. This used to be pretty stiff and it was hard to twist. Now it has a little more twist and a little more give with and without flexing with the hammock strap. In comparison to the Cartel X, it's much more stiff. It still has a little twist, but almost no give. I can feel it just flexing a touch, but at least they have a nice pad here to kind of reduce calf bite. But one thing I love about Burton bindings is they have the best high back rotation in the business. So when you're dealing with EST and Reflex, so you can really reduce the chance of calf bite by rotating your high backs. In comparison to the Step-On, you still have this, and this is my favorite of all the Step-On bindings I've tried, and I've tried the Step-On X, the Step-On, and this. I just like that they did this here as well, and you have a nice twisty, softy. Now, when it comes to flex underfoot, there is a really cool technology that's been around forever now called Reflex. The disc has a flexing point in the center here, so you can bend it either way. And then throughout the binding, there are flexing points as well, over the gas pedal and over the heel. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but I can feel it flex. And in comparison to EST, Yeah, it doesn't flex as easy, but it's just talking about shades of excellence when it comes to flex underfoot. And there are some mini discs out there that have a similar feel and allow the board to flex just about as much, but this is very unique. And one thing I don't like about Reflex and EST is the plastic on the sides can cause marks and damage your board over time. I wish they had put some rubber along here or something like that at the bottom to kind of minimize the contact with the board, but overall, it's just an excellent technology. And if you compare it to the Step-On, it's kind of the same, except for there is plastic right here. And I almost wish they did that here in the hopes that it might improve response a little bit. Now, when it comes to turn initiation and response, testing these against so many other bindings, I found that they are very middle ground in terms of response. It's just this very smooth, easy response that's continuous throughout the turn. I will say, if you want much more response and you want a more symmetrical response, Step-On's the way to go. And in comparison to the Cartel X EST, it's very similar. And Burton bindings are all just kind of like various forms of medium to medium fast, but they're just kind of more in that middle ground area. That's what they do best. And when you've got these bindings on a board that's a little bit on the medium to softer side, these increase response because they increase the twist and the tip to tail flex, and you can just access the natural flex of that board better. But the stiffer and more aggressive the board gets, the less the reflex works with that and the less responsive it gets. So it really is board specific in terms of what kind of response you get, but overall it's kind of medium and smooth. Now, when it comes to shock absorption and dampness, you have a lot of shock absorption in the heel, a good amount in the toe with the plastic in the middle so there's no pressure points over the sway bar. I love that. And it's a pretty damp ride, but not the dampest because you are dealing with EVA foam and plastic. So if you get on a binding that might have rubber across the bottom, you'll find that those are a lot damper. Or, you know, if you get on nows that have the rubber stopper, those absorb that micro bumpy chatter a lot better. But this EVA foam is just great for shock absorption, landing on a jump. This just feels so good and so cush. And it's great for slow speed shock absorption. I think it's kind of a mixed bag. So they're not ultra damp, but they're definitely cushy and they absorb shock. And when it comes to support, there aren't many better ankle straps out there in the business. It just gives you that nice bit of support, but a little bit of freedom of movement. And when you're in a Step-On system, you don't have this freedom of movement. You have this support here, which is not as good as this. But you don't have this side-to-side movement, which I really like and appreciate. Now with this, you have more sway, and I really like that, not just for buttering, but for turning and weighting your back foot or your front foot. With this, you're really stuck there. It's really hard to move. With this, you can see you've got a lot more freedom of movement. So it's all about feel, better response, more symmetrical response versus a better feel from tip to tail, more ankle support. Because sometimes you'll hit some bumps with this and when it folds in the middle, you don't have that ankle support like you do here. Now, the toe strap isn't as great as the ankle strap personally. I've always felt the toe strap with Burton lacking a little bit. I like this newer model a little better, but in comparison to a lot of other straps out there, I'm just not finding this as good and supportive as others, but it's still good enough. It doesn't come loose as much as it used to. I love how easy and smooth the double take ratchet is. It's just so easy on and off. In comparison to most other bindings out there, it's one of the smoothest ratchets. Obviously, in comparison to step-on, you just step and go. So this is still exponentially faster, but you're only looking at a few extra seconds if you know what you're doing, you know how to stand up and strap in still. The one thing I don't like about the ratchets, especially on the toe strap, is I like to crank down over the toe where I have no pressure points. It doesn't affect my feet in any way, shape, or form, and really pull the boot into this high back. So when I do that, at a certain point, you crank down hard, it won't crank any further. It just says, nope, I'm done. Where with other bindings, I can get one or two more pops in to really lock it in. This just says, no, that's as far as you go. Now, when it comes to adjustability, dialing this out for your boot to fit centered in the binding and therefore centered on board, it's a mixed bag here. It's not as good as EST is with Burton boards and other boards that use the channel system. There aren't many, but there are a few. But it's not bad, and you can move this one forward or one back to center this on the board. Then you also have an adjustable gas pedal here, so you can slide this forward or backwards. And you have 4 adjusters here. I don't know if you can see that. It's very hard to pick up on camera, but there are 4 little holes. Set that up accordingly so you can get the boot over the gas pedal properly and make sure you're initiating the toe side properly, which I think is massively important. If you're not on the gas pedal correctly, you're going to be lacking even more on toe side response. Burton's all about basically one base plate from here to the heel, so they don't have an adjustable heel cup to really center your boot in the binding. But it really doesn't matter as much because you can't turn reflex discs sideways from tip to tail and get that little bit of extra slide to dial out your stance with on a regular snowboard. And for me, with all the different boards I ride, or for you, if you ride in a quiver and you like a certain stance width, these are going to be difficult to get the stance width you want, especially if you're on a twin or an ASIM twin and you want the board centered so you can ride switch and regular. It's going to be hard to get that perfect stance width because you're moving almost 20 millimeters or almost 3/4 of an inch each way, because that's the distance between inserts. So that's kind of a deal breaker for me personally, but everything else about this binding I really enjoy. So overall, I love the new, more mellowed out high back. I think that's great. And it was really cool to compare them to the Cartel X, to other bindings out there, and especially the Genesis Step-On. And it was really surprising how different each performed. Personally, I still prefer the Genesis, but I would love to see them change up things a little bit to where we get a little more toe side response out of the Genesis so it can match the Genesis Step-On a little more. But still, as it stands, it's a very recommendable binding.